The following video contains the worst green screen ever seen by mankind. Viewer discretion is advised. What's popular, YouTube? Another day, another demo. Wait a minute. I think the most attentive viewers might have noticed something's not quite right here. That's because I ain't Launders. It's me, the Counter-Strike Scholar, baby! Get this out of here right now. Get it out. Just get it out. I ain't in Canada. I'm in the UK, boys. And I'm ready to do an unlucky or bad on EliGE's. Alright, we should probably get this green screen situation sorted out. Let me just clean up for a second. And then I'll get into what the hell is actually going on in the video. You know what? I'm going to stand to explain. You all can't stop me. Okay, the framing can stop me, though. I'm a little bit out of frame. We'll crouch down like this the whole time. If you don't know who Launders is, he is a great content creator who does a series called Unlucky or Bad, where he looks at a demo from a pro player who has had a bad stat line, and he figures out whether he thinks they just had an unlucky game or whether they actually made some mistakes. And I DM'd Launders, I'll show it somewhere, and asked him if he was going to do one on this EliGE's game. He said no, and he said I could feel free to do it. So I'm not going to make this a regular thing. This is definitely Launders' thing, and you should absolutely check out his channel because his in-depth review of players' POVs is incredible. I love his content, so check him out. He will be linked down below. But I'm going to put my own spin on it. I'm not good at talking for an extended period of time like Launders does. I just can't do it, man. I can't go through a whole demo without messing up my words or absolutely just messing something up. I kind of just messed something up right there. By there. See? This is exactly what I mean, okay? I just messed up my words. So I'm going to edit it down, and that's what we'll be doing. So why not give it a go? Let's get into the video. Bars. So, as I was saying, we are going to go through every round. Some are more interesting than others, though. And the CT pistol is actually a pretty good start from EliGE's. He pushes long with his teammate behind him. I think Liquid heard some steps elsewhere to give them a bit more confidence in this push. And he gets one nice kill from behind, which is about all you can expect here before G2 turn it around on him. So, good start for EliGE's. Into the second round, there was no bomb plant for G2, so I wonder whether Liquid weren't fully expecting this scout in play from Amanek. Either way, they have fallen scout covering mid while a couple of players try and push through, but Naf gets picked off early. And then, unfortunately for EliGE's on this lower tunnels push, now that they've been spotted on their mid aggression by that scout from Amanek, it means the tunnels players can just sit on this angle and wait for the aggression. And that means EliGE's is swinging into players who are already aware that he's going to go for this fight. Either way, though, this aim is still pretty off from EliGE's. I think he'd be pretty disappointed with some of these misses, and he had his opportunity here to get a kill, just couldn't make the most of it. So definitely not a great look here in this second round, although the fact they got spotted pushing lower tunnels through mid, I think had a pretty big part to play in why this went so badly. There are plenty of rounds where EliGE's opponents just land banger shots, and round 3 is a great example of that. This is a sick shot from Jax, although Liquid definitely should have coordinated this play slightly better, in my opinion. EliGE's has a nade being thrown as the flash from Grim pops behind him, so that means he has to re-peek this angle dry against Jax, who gets the chance to establish himself on the angle with the dig, which isn't ideal. So more just the coordination between these two players than anything else going wrong here. Into round 4, I like that EliGE's gets boosted up to cap quickly in this round, because Liquid don't have much utility, and so instead of having to use nades to hold short, boosting up to get into the position early is a nice way of doing it. And I also really like this attempted boost for EliGE's to peek over in towards short as the round goes on. But unfortunately for him, G2 are actually watching this. Amanek lands a tag with the scout. And then the site take from G2 ends up being super solid, and there's not much EliGE's can do against this quick kill from Jax again. Round 5 is a round where EliGE's literally buys nothing, so not really much worth showing here. Pretty much the expected outcome. But in round 6, Liquid try and use some nades to contest the long control, and they end up deciding to give up on this pretty quickly once they think they can't get it. And this is the role EliGE's quite often plays on this CT side, is that player who initially leans over to A and then maybe rotates back towards CT or mid. And that's what happens here. He boosts Fallen up to the site, goes and doubles up on mid, and eventually he gets called back to the A side of the map, puts in this decent counter flash to slow G2 down, but then as they cross to the site, these are just whiffs that I'm not used to seeing from EliGE's, but he's unable to get the kill on the cross. Round 7 is another snoozer of a low buy where EliGE's gets an SG pretty early on and so pretty quickly decides just to save. And he tries to put that SG to use in round 8, where Liquid are this time able to hold off on the long control early, and after not seeing anything towards long, EliGE's will quickly rotate back into CT. Unfortunately though, as this B play is coming in, EliGE's starts to rotate before he's even pulled his gun out, and this is a mistake in my opinion. They know there should still be a player near these mid doors, as they just heard Nico drop the hinge smoke, but for some reason, EliGE's isn't ready for this specific fight in towards the mid doors. In round 9, we get a similar start to the round. EliGE's will go running forwards with this molly out, and if he thinks the T's are going to fight for long control, that's when he throws this molly, but if they hear nothing, he just keeps it for later. Then he rotates back through CT, but again, isn't fully ready for Nico to be this far forwards and gets picked off. This looks like a scenario where EliGE's is aware someone could have pushed up mid early and throws the molly to try and slow them, but I don't think he's fully cognizant of the fact that someone could beat this molly as he hears it hit Nico. He seems to panic slightly, although this isn't too bad as at least Naf gets the trade this time. Round 10 ends up being a bog standard save, and while if this was a James demo, maybe I'd break down the brilliant ways in which James saves his gun, I ain't doing that for EliGE's. This is just a boring round. The next one is more interesting though, as Liquid go for this heavy long control again and get info early, but G2 go for a delayed long take, and so EliGE's utility ends up being really helpful. He throws this flash and smoke initially, and then also throws this molly to make sure no one can be behind the blue container, and that sets up Naf for this nice and easy early kill. Unfortunately though, the coordination between Grim and EliGE's seems slightly off again, as EliGE's sprays into the long doors and a stray bullet ends up getting a team kill, which puts EliGE's back down to 0 frags, which is a shame. And then as he rotates into CT, while initially this death looks really bad, you have to realize that EliGE's actually had Fallen behind him here and probably thought Fallen was watching this smoke for him. But Fallen pulls out a nade at a bad time, so I'm not going to be as harsh as him here. This was kind of just bad timing. Into round 12, EliGE's gets fast-catted again, and after an initial exchange of nades, Liquid set up this double stack towards short, where EliGE's job really is just to get the one kill, and he does so well. He gets the first frag, Grim is set up next to him to get a kill of his own and fall back safely, so this is a spot which really is meant to be a one and done, and EliGE's does his job. And this aggressive stance also really helps slow down any potential A execute, which is really nice. In this next round, there's not too much to break down. EliGE's gets a pretty nice kill into top mid against these pistols, although he's definitely been hit with some nice shots throughout this game, and this double dink Tech 9 from Hunter is money, and there's not too much EliGE's can do here, I think. Into round 14, again, EliGE's early job is to help Grim get this foothold on long, which he does successfully, and then he goes back to CT spawn to replenish those nades later on. And as the time trickles on down in this round, Liquid get up into a 5v2, so this flash into a kill from EliGE's really is just the icing on the cake, but it's still a well-taken frag and a well-played round. And into the last round of the half, while EliGE's doesn't get any kills in this round, this utility he puts into the mid doors is really important to make sure that Naf, who is solo holding B, doesn't just get ganged up on from both sides. So a solid job at just locking this down and allowing himself to rotate over to B, but as the round plays out, Naf ends up absolutely locking down the B site, and EliGE's never even needs to come into play. All in all, definitely a fair few mistakes on CT side, but I also think some of those were down to Liquid's poor coordination as a whole and some great shots from G2. And that's kind of how the second half starts as well. EliGE's misses a couple of shots spotting for this Hunter mid-aggression, and if you miss a couple of shots at this level, sometimes you're going to open the door for your opponents to land some bangers like this. Into the follow-up round, EliGE's buys an MP5, which isn't a gun I personally enjoy, but I can get behind it. I can't really get behind this hinge smoke from NAF though, as it ends up trickling down, and that's what kind of leads to EliGE's downfall in this round. As he's leading the charge up mid, he really needed that hinge smoke to be there so he didn't have to worry about the mid doors, but instead, as he goes up to short, he gets exposed from both these angles and ends up getting double teamed. You could maybe argue EliGE's doesn't have to make this play after the smoke misses, but at the same time, Liquid need map control here and don't have many nades left, so just a bit of an unfortunate situation all round. Against the Eco in round 18, Liquid go for an A split through short and long, and while EliGE's does get caught off guard by this flank here, I think getting the site control is always the most important thing in this situation. As long as Liquid get onto the site, they have enough nades to win the post plant, so I don't hate this from EliGE's, although you could maybe argue he could watch the flank here. I think it's fine. Into the first gun round, EliGE's uses a lot of his utility on the early long control, a couple of flashes as well as a well-placed smoke to make sure they can assist on this long take. Unfortunately though, while this happens, two of his teammates die elsewhere and they end up having to default back, eventually finding this 3v4 and a solid trade onto this A site. Pretty good spacing here to get this kill. Unfortunately though, EliGE's still gets left in the clutch, and while this was always going to be a difficult 1v3 to win, it still feels like he's not fully ready for NiKo to push him in this position. The reaction is off and he doesn't hit any shots, and I have got the feeling a couple of times in this demo that EliGE's hasn't fully mentally been ready for some of these fights. Into this next one, after going down to a 4v5, Liquid call for this fake A execute into a B-sided play, and EliGE's job here is to fake the A play a bit and drop into CT and mostly just cut off those rotates while his teammates try and take the site. And EliGE's does that pretty effectively here, getting into CT well, getting this kill onto NiKo, but unfortunately, if his teammates aren't going to win the fights towards the B site here, it's just not going to give him a chance to have much impact, and that's what happens. I'd say EliGE's did his job in this round, it's just his teammates didn't put him in a position where he could win it. EliGE's moves through lower tunnels in towards Xbox at the start of this round, and I think it is fair to say it's a little unfortunate that he takes the brunt of both of these nades down to 40 health. Even though you could argue EliGE's made the timing of this push somewhat obvious, it is still very rare for these nades to actually land so effectively. Oftentimes they'll do like 10 damage maximum. And then Liquid set up a B split with EliGE's throwing this CT smoke, and he ends up feeling the wrath of Hunter in this one, who lands an unbelievable shot in from the doors. You already know I had to get that from Hunter's POV too, because that is a ridiculous shot. Not much EliGE's can do against that. Although I would love to hear the comms from this round, because Liquid seemed to just lose track of the fact that Hunter was on this B site, even though EliGE's should have seen that Hunter was the player in towards B who killed him. And so the fact that they lose track of Hunter here is not great. I can't say anything definitively about the comms in this spot. Maybe it was just so hectic that no one heard EliGE's call. But either way, it would have been nice if he pointed out to his teammates that there was still one more player at B. And those are the kinds of things you can do while having a bad game that can still have a really good impact to set up your teammates wisely. Even after you die, sometimes you might have that important piece of information that could help you win the round. Into round 24, here is that amazingly intricate hinge smoke lineup that some teams have started throwing from T-spawn, which EliGE's does land successfully. And then, I'm going to be honest, this round really doesn't come down to EliGE's play at all. It is the overall call and the overall play from Liquid that costs them. There's such little time left on the clock here that EliGE's just has to try and force something through this B smoke. And, well, when you're the first man going in and you haven't been able to draw rotates away from the site and you're running through a smoke, there is literally nothing you can do here. Going into round 25, Liquid decide to call for another B-sided play, this time with most of the attack focused through mid, and I think this is the first time we really see a mess up with utility for EliGE's. He ends up just accidentally throwing this smoke towards the mid doors. That is one that's taken right out of the Hawka playbook right there. And that actually costs Liquid quite a lot here, as they have to wait for Naf to get in position to throw his smoke instead, which really takes the sting out of the attack. And even though EliGE's does do a decent job at getting this one quick kill onto the site, none of his teammates have been able to frag, and they are just not finding any success towards this B site right now. I haven't included a couple of these half buys so far, because oftentimes they end up like this, where EliGE's will either go for a pick and lose, or he will commit to the strategy the team is calling. But with a Tech 9 running up Wong like this, unless you've got some really good flashes, this is just a fight you're destined to lose. Liquid win this round without EliGE's having to do anything, but I do want to point out the nades he uses onto Long, especially this smoke, which lands really quickly on the corner. It is really nice to have the guy who's running to Long be able to throw this smoke, so definitely a cool way of doing things. We get the long control again in round 28, and eventually Liquid only have this one smoke in position for the cross, so they kind of have to half-heartedly run boost Naf across because they don't have those nade protocols properly in place. Grim does have a smoke, but he's not on long, so he can't help them. And then it looks like EliGE's initial instinct here is to want to try and capitalize upon that player from CT who was shooting at Naf as he crossed. But he didn't account for the fact that Jax could be up close and gets caught off guard by this closer range angle. I don't mind the play here from EliGE's though, because realistically, Naf is going to need some help on the site, so making this heads-up play was probably the right sort of idea, just didn't work out in reality. And then this final round sums things up pretty nicely. Liquid go for this long control, and EliGE's is able to run out long while his teammates are running distraction, and probably should be able to get this trade onto Jax, but it just never quite comes together for him. And I think that kind of sums up this game from EliGE's. There were definitely some bad moments, a couple of times where he got out-positioned, or a couple of times where his aim just looked off and he wasn't ready for fights. But definitely a lot of moments that I would say are somewhat unfortunate, or at least a mix of the two. Especially in scenarios where you could tell Liquid were playing pretty loose and maybe there were some miscommunications or some misunderstandings between players. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for making it so far, and I'll catch you next time.